Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, members of the media, and those of you joining us on PBCJ. We want to welcome you to our briefing this morning. It's Wednesday morning, and normally at this time we would have the Jamaica House weekly briefing. This morning we are upstaged by the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. So this is not our Jamaica House briefing, but we have given the stage this morning to the Ministry. There are some important announcements which we want to communicate to you. My name is Lincoln Robinson, and thanks for joining us. At the head table with me from far left is Mrs. Bear Williams. She is the Senior Investment Manager at the National Insurance Fund. And beside her, the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry. And next to me is Minister Kelly. Now, the government's job creation program is very much in the news these days, and part of what we're going to be hearing this morning are some announcements pertinent to that initiative coming specifically from the National Insurance Fund. Now, at this time, it is my very special pleasure to welcome the Honourable Derek Kelly. I want to apologize also for the late start. Our Minister was chairing another meeting here on the property, so we have just been able to pull him away from that meeting. Minister Kelly, your turn. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lincoln, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Apart from those persons you recognize, I also want to recognize Mr. Milverton Reynolds, who is from the DBJ. My intention this morning, ladies and gentlemen, is to speak to the significant increase in dollar amount in the credit facility of the small and medium enterprises under the auspices of the National Insurance Fund, the NIF. As we are all reasonably aware, the economy at present is challenged by a number of persistent adverse internal and external factors that prevent it from achieving its full potential for growth. Nevertheless, in spite of the difficulties that confront the economy, the government recognizes that there are possibilities and some realistic opportunities for long-term sustainable investment, growth and employment creation in the country. As is clear for all to see, we are expending a great deal of quality time and effort in attracting mega investment capital to our shores. But given the timeline involved in getting these investments off the ground, it may be some time before the country is able to realize huge spikes in the employment numbers on account of the mega investment projects. One area of the economy, however, that has proven to be very responsive to the challenge of employment creation is the small and medium enterprise sector. And because of this positive outlook for this sector, the government is committed to providing it with as much support as possible in helping it to fully realize its potential within the local economy. It is worth remembering that in 2006, on the advice of the Most Honourable Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller, the National Investment Fund invested $1 billion into the small and medium enterprise sector as a revolving credit facility through a network of participation financial institutions at the rate of 4% per annum on the reducing balances. This was a decision that was highly criticized at the time by various sectional interests in the country. But I now wish to advise the country on the positive outcome since 2006 of that insightful investment decision. To begin with, the initial $1 billion investment did not in any way jeopardize the viability of the National Insurance Fund. And secondly, every dollar that has been loaned since then has been repaid with the agreed interests. In addition, beneficiaries of this loan initiative, I'm proud to say, are now bona fide participants in the National Insurance Scheme, making them fully NIS contributors so that in retirement they are guaranteed a pension. But more than this, since the introduction of a loan facility in 2006, the National Insurance Fund has disbursed some $9 $131.69 million through 12 participating financial institutions. The loans were primarily used for job creation among 7 economic sectors, namely agriculture, agro-processing, manufacturing, manufacturing services, the service sector, trading sector, and work study. In fact, over the period of the loan facility, a total of some 4,225 jobs were either created or maintained as a result of loans disbursed under this credit facility. Of interest is the fact that 25.1% of the loans created were taken up by females, 130 of them, while 73.17% or 379 were taken up by males. Couples took up 1.74% or about 9% of the available loans under the credit facility. Overall, the loans under discussion to the SME sector have enabled most borrowers to grow their business by realizing increases in assets and profits. Most importantly, access to the SME loans facilitated the entrepreneurs in generating employment and as a result make a valuable contribution to the country's overall economic development. It is for this reason then that the government will be providing an increase in the amount allocated under the National Insurance Fund Small and Medium Enterprise Credit Facility from $1 billion to $1.5 billion at a very reasonable interest rate, with the expiration date of the facility moving from April 30th, 2015 to April 30th, 2018. Once again, the funds in question will be accessible through various participating financial institutions that over the years have proven themselves committed to working with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security and the National Insurance Fund in ensuring the success of the credit facility program. There can be no doubt that job creation in the long, medium and short term remains a burning issue for this administration. The National Insurance Fund Small and Medium Enterprise Credit Facility have proven to have contributed in a meaningful way to the creation of employment across several business sectors. We are going to do everything possible to enhance this goal even further. And that is why we are increasing the funding under the credit facility and extending the expiration date in certain knowledge that this will enhance job creation, grow businesses, stimulate entrepreneurial access to working capital, and embolden community development and by extension that of the nation. I'd also like to turn to another issue that has been very topical recently, and I know that the country is very much interested in getting some answers and some information on it, and this is as it relates to the issuance of work permit. As you all know, the business of dealing with work permits falls under the auspices and control of the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. We do administer a rigorous regime in this regard. In doing so, we take an account of certain conditionalities such as investment, economic growth and employment opportunities. Foremost in all these considerations is the protection of the Jamaican worker. In other words, qualified and skilled Jamaicans are always given preference over foreigners. Jamaica, as is well known to everyone, is constantly in search of investments. And in fact, one of the major priorities of government is to promote and encourage investments that have the potential not only for economic growth but also for employment opportunities. For a number of these investments, however, there are conditionalities and employment ratios that are predetermined. For the period April 2012 to July 2013, a total of 4,098 work permits were issued. Of this number, some 1,741 or 43% were given to Chinese nationals. And this is indicative of the level of Chinese investment in the country at this time. These Chinese nationals are employed namely in the wholesale retail trade and on construction, road improvement, housing solutions, and basic medical facilities construction at the UWI, just to name a few. And the list is growing. And in most of these instances, Chinese nationals are engaged. Those engaged are of a technical and professional nature and in no way displace Jamaican workers. The general position is that when there is need in an establishment for work permits to be issued, those jobs have to be advertised locally first in our newspapers. And so long as there is no one responding to those applications that are suitable to the employers, then the ministry moves ahead to support them with a work permit to bring someone from abroad. There are some categories to which we do not issue work permits, and we know it is of concern to a lot of our persons, particularly because the unemployment rate at this time is quite high. We do not give work permits for laborers on work sites. And furthermore, it must be understood that the percentage ratios that exist on work sites is to give an opportunity as well for technology transfer to take place, so that those persons who come from abroad to work here in our country, there is someone on the work sites to understudy them, so that when they leave, we are in a position to fill those slots ourselves and to prepare for future projects. So all in all, I just want to assure the nation that the Ministry of Labour and Social Security is not distributing work permits willy-nilly. Due diligence is being done to ensure that the Jamaican worker is protected and is in no way impeded from access to these sites that the projects are taking place on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister. A combination of initiatives there announced by the Minister addressing increased credit facilities for small and micro enterprises, as well as on the issue of work permits. Very important issues for all of us. We're now going to open the briefing to questions from the media. I invite my journalist colleagues to identify themselves and their questions and to whom it is being directed. At the head table here, we also like to remind you that we have the Permanent Secretary and the Senior Investment Manager for the National Insurance Fund. I think we also have in the audience Ms. Lisa and Grant for the Work Permit Director, so if there are issues and questions there. Latoya, you will help me? Do I recognize?
Darren Luton from the Gleaner.
Thanks, Darren. Yep.
Yes, thank you. To Minister Kelly, in relation to the credit facility, I read this week where $3.5 billion on a similar program was disbursed by way of the DBJ, or at least through the approved financial institutions, and the number of jobs created was just about 3,000. How does that square with your projection now in terms of creating further employment by further extending this program? Bear in mind that it seems that you have not gotten enough jobs through the creation under facilities like these.
Well, the evaluation that I spoke to earlier of the $1 billion was indeed successful. The initiatives that the DBJ has put in place also to support the sector. The fact of the matter is the small and medium-sized enterprises and micro-business have the capacity more than any other sector to grow the jobs and employment very quickly. And if you notice that there is always a cry in that sector that they do not have enough financing. What the government is making sure of is that there is more than adequate financing there to help to grow the economy and for people to have own account jobs so that they can create their own businesses and get along with helping to build the economy. So there is not a difficulty in terms of the numbers, because there are different levels to the amount that can be disbursed under the different facilities. And you will find that the limits that are set by the institutions are different. So there may be some that can go up to $5 million, there are some that go up to $500,000. So there is a difference, and that will give rise to the numbers fluctuating.
Have you done an assessment, Minister, of the banks, these approved financial institutions, their willingness or ability to disburse these funds to small and micro borrowers at reasonable rates? I remember perhaps it was a parliamentary discussion, and you may have been involved, where it was said that a lot of the funds are sitting there because of these approved institutions. They don't have there's no motivation for them really to unlend those funds.
I'll ask Ms. Audrey Williams to shed some light on that question.
In fact, with our facility, we did not find that ours was not used. Ours was fully used, and in fact what we found were the institutions were constantly coming back and asking if we could in fact extend the facility, increase the amount, which is why we have this initiative now. So we did not have that situation where our funds were not taken up. In fact, what we did, there was a time frame within which each institution was required to draw down on their loan, and if they did not, we reallocated to those institutions who were actively unlending the funds. So we did not have that problem with the institutions we worked with. And quite honestly, we worked a lot with the DBJ, which is why we have Mr. Reynolds here with us this morning, and the Exim Bank, and the other major partner was Jane Small Business. Those three institutions, as well as the credit unions, really did a good job disbursing the funds. So practically all of our funds were taken up. Almost all of it has been repaid. And so because of that interest, we decided to extend the facility.
May I have a final one on this?
You want to?
Just a final one on this. Can you speak to the interest rates that people may have to pay on these loans, and also the collateral that they might need to put up?
We lend to the institutions at 4%, and the maximum that they can unlend is 10% to the small businesses. And as Minister indicated earlier, our loans have a limit of $5 million. So we really are targeting small businesses. And in fact, you had asked, the question was asked earlier about employment. In what we found, we disbursed 500 loans, and we created almost twice that amount in new jobs. And these are all small businesses, not large businesses. So we thought that was successful. So just to reiterate, we lend at 4 to the institutions, and they can unlend to a maximum of 10%. Oh, in terms of collateral, various institutions will take various different kinds of collateral. Because remember, you know, the National Insurance Fund, we do not take the risk. It is the PFIs who take the risk. So they have to do their credit analysis and determine what is best suited for their business. Because regardless of whether they are paid, we have to be paid. So they are the ones really taking the credit risk.
Well, we have Mr. Reynolds from the DBJ here, so I don't know if he would like to expand on some of those concerns. Yes?
Come on.
You can take my seat here up, Milverton, so that we can all hear the response.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to commend the Minister and the NIF for extending and renewing this facility. The DBJ, in fact, was a major beneficiary of the first facility that the NIF put out back in 2007. So I want to really commend the ministry and the NIF for making, not only for extending the facility, but for increasing it by 50%. I think it is timely and it is significant. Certainly for us at the DBJ, where we have set ourselves a target this year with our focus on the SME sector of disbursing some $2 billion. This will certainly enable us to achieve that target. I think it is significant too, because one of the difficulties that we have seen with the SME sector, well, both the micro, small and medium-sized sector, is they tend to borrow in Jamaican dollars. This is a Jamaican dollar facility. We don't have any shortage of loan funding in US dollars, but there is definitely a need for J dollar funding. So this is very significant in that it makes J dollar funding at a very, very competitive rate available to the SME sector. Now, to some of the questions that was raised earlier. In terms of job creations, and I mean the fact that we might have disbursed $3 billion for 3,000 jobs, I mean that is not insignificant. I think it is still significant. It speaks to new jobs. It doesn't speak to the number of jobs that are maintained when you make disbursements to small businesses. I think also we need to bear in mind that what we are seeing at the DBJ currently is that there are a lot of small businesses that are borrowing for alternative energy purposes, so that they're not necessarily creating new jobs with these loans, but they are making their operations more efficient, and therefore they're able, certainly those that are in the export business are able to export and are more competitive. And that is something that I think we need to bear in mind. Certainly our loans that we are going to be make available through our approved financial institutions will in fact get to the end borrower at single-digit rates. I can say that definitively, that is what will happen. I don't know if there are any other issues that... Okay, well, clearly each financial institution will assess each application using their own criteria. What we have done at the DBJ is that in addition to the normal collateral, where there is, certainly for the small and medium-sized sector, we have put in place what we call a credit enhancement facility, which is really an insurance guarantee to the financial institutions, where if a particular loan application comes in and when it's assessed it is seen to be viable, the company has a good business plan, but there may be not sufficient collateral, we are prepared to provide a guarantee of up to $10 million for each loan, or 50% of whatever the loan amount is, but the cap on the amount of the guarantee is $10 million. So that in a way is also making it easier for the small and medium-sized sector to access financing. And we have seen quite a significant take-up of this facility in recent times, and we expect that that will continue.
Hold my seat, Mr. Reynolds, because I'm sure there might be some other questions. General, recognize you?
Yes, General Perseus, Television Jamaica. Sir or Miss, can you tell us what percentage of the previous facility that wasn't paid for? And on the issue of timeliness, we have an economy in decline. Was that taken into consideration when you thought about extending this loan facility?
Well, first of all, if you recall my presentation in Parliament earlier on this year in the budget debate, I indicated that this facility will come on stream. We have just, having made that projection earlier in the year, in April, thereabouts, Cabinet has just given the approval to move ahead with it, and that is the reason why we're having this briefing now to let the country know exactly what is on the table, what is available for them to access. So, all in all, we are aware that we are in difficult economic times, and this initiative was, having been so successful based on the evaluation, we figured that it was an area in which we had to get cracking right away. The micro-enterprise zone is indeed the fastest growing sector in most economies, and once you have the funds in there to support it, it will grow and grow quickly. And we certainly needed that because of the very question you raised, the decline in how the economy is moving. So, you know, it is a timely intervention, but it was not prejudged by anything else other than the success of it. Remember, we started the initiative in 2006. So this is a continuation because of the success.
You want to add to that?
Only to say that clearly we are mindful of the turnaround time to get these loans on the books, and we do everything possible. As a matter of fact, one of the difficulties I think a lot of small businesses have, which we are seeking to address as well through our technical assistance and institutional strengthening, is that their ability to access loans from the financial institutions. They don't have, a lot of them might not have financial statements, they don't have a business plan, and we're seeking to work through the agencies of government that provide the service so that the SME companies can in fact access the financing, and we do everything possible. I mean, at the DBJ, for example, we have a turnaround time once the application gets to us within 2 weeks at maximum. We would have approved it and advised the financial institution accordingly.
No, I was asking what percentage of the loan wasn't paid for from the previous loan to 2000.
You meaning delinquency?
Delinquency,
yes.
No,
As the minister said in his statement, fully paid back.
Okay, and finally, Minister, on the issue of work permits, how often do you monitor these sites where the Chinese workers, for example, are employed to ensure that they are doing what they have on paper to do when it comes to Jamaica?
Well, we, as a matter of course, our inspectors monitor all work sites, whether they are Chinese workers, they are Indians or from any nationality, Jamaicans. We monitor all work sites. And basically, if we get reports of any violations that persons perceive, we make sure we investigate to see whether or not these accusations or these allegations are true. And if we find that persons are working outside of are not conforming with the tenets of the permit that they have been given, then we will take the necessary action to revoke those permits. What people have to understand, though, we have to be realistic. The culture of the Chinese is a little different from the culture of the Jamaican worker. And you will find that on a Jamaican work site, that you have all Jamaicans. If you have an engineer on that site and he's walking past a barrow, a wheelbarrow that is in the wrong place, he will walk around it. The Chinese engineer is going to take it up and move it. It doesn't mean that he becomes a laborer. People will see this and say, oh, you have people here who are engineers, but they say they are engineers, but they're pushing wheelbarrow on site. Now, we have to be very careful about how we jump to conclusions about some of these things, because in instances where we get allegations and we have really done some examinations, it does not turn out to be exactly what the perception was. So we have to be very careful about that. Persons who come here and are given permits, their documentation speaks to the veracity of that situation. And we do monitor the sites. We don't tell people when we are coming, because obviously that will put them on their guard, but we monitor all sites on a regular basis, and the reports come in. Where we find people in violation, we take action. And you must understand also that the Passport, Immigration and Citizens Agency, PICA, they also have a responsibility in all of this, and we work together. You know, so there's information coming to them that they need to pass on to us, they do so, and we do what we have to do, and vice versa. So in the joint up government approach to doing things, all the agencies that have an interest in these matters, we collaborate. We have a committee that meets quite often to determine how the permits should be issued and so on. And it has been going quite well. And I just want to say to the Jamaican community, we are doing everything in these exercises to protect the Jamaican worker. We are not giving away the jobs that you can do. Anybody that we give authorization to come has to be a part of an agreement, some memorandum of understanding that goes along with investment.
Thank you. Orville Burt, Nationwide News. Minister, gentlemen, ma'am, could you say what is the breakdown in terms of loan disbursement to the various sectors or industries? For example, agriculture, manufacturing, and so on. Because there are implications for employment based on where the funds are flowing. What has the outturn been so far, and what are your focus areas going forward?
What I wanted that. As I said earlier in the presentation, I gave the areas listed from agriculture, agro-processing, manufacturing and manufacturing services, the service sector, the trading sector, and work study. These are the areas, for the most part, where the funds have been disbursed. And if you want the tables now, yeah, in agriculture, 33% of the funds were distributed there. In manufacturing, 21%. In the service sector, 36%. In trading, 6%. 2% in work study, and in agro-processing, just about 1%. Manufacturing was 0.39%, not 39%, 0.39%. But agriculture took the largest portion of it. It was some 518 loans in all, and those are the sectors that benefited mostly from it. And as you know, these have multiplier effects, you know, in terms of the persons employed. This is not persons employed, these are loans given. And in each case, you know, persons have to be employed to allow the businesses to go. They have to employ persons. And as was explained by the DBJ chief here, in some instances, part of getting competitive and moving up the productivity index has to do with things like how you manage your power resources, your energy resources. And if you invest in energy saving initiatives, it will help the business to grow, because you now can produce at a more competitive level for export and for local consumption, and that will help the businesses to grow. So it has a multiplier effect going down the road.
If I just add, I mean, and again, I just want to support what the minister has indicated in terms of where the jobs are created for the previous line of credit. I mean, I don't have the breakout for what's happening currently, certainly for us for this financial year in terms of the sectors, but I do know that the agricultural sector is one of the predominant sectors that are coming to us for funding, the agro-processing sector. And interestingly enough, we're seeing quite a number of manufacturing projects that we are funding. The tourism sector also is another sector, and the services sector. I think it is important to note that what we're really doing, again, and this is part of the agreement with the NIF, is that we are targeting high creating jobs. That's our target, and in industries that can in fact stimulate growth and create employment. For example, I can just tell you in terms of and why I think this particular facility now is so important to us. For the first 5 months of our financial year, we have disbursed some $760 million to the SME sector, some 3,756 loans, supporting investments of approximately $1.1 billion. So we see this facility at this time, the Jamaican dollar facility, being very, very significant, and as I said, very, very timely.
Thanks, Mr. Reynolds.
Sorry, if I could just add one other important sector. Another major partner for the NIF on this initiative has been the Exim Bank. And, you know, Exim is concentrating on export or import substitution. So we are also increasing the amount that will be available for the Exim Bank under the facility. So I just thought that we should add that as well, because we think it is important that we export and encourage more exports or import substitution. So
I know you're pressed for time. My final question is, there's a tendency for a lot of activity to be focused in Kingston, but the unemployment situation is widespread across the island. So I don't know if you have that kind of data available, like how have they been, what's the take-up like across the island?
we don't have it broken down by rural, urban, but you can surmise based on the fact that the majority of the loans were to the agricultural sector and service sector that those would have been out in the more rural areas. In fact, our loans through DBJ go primarily through the PC banks, so they are out primarily in the country.
I'm sorry, we do have this information available, but I don't have it here this morning. But we do provide that on a regular basis for our board, spread across the country in the various parishes. So I can make that information available. But as has been said, agriculture is something which is primarily in the rural area. So you would see that quite a number of the loans, in fact, are in not in Kingston, but in the other parishes.
Thanks, Orville. Any other questions? Yes?
Good morning. Release of collateral on MSME players. Last week there was a discussion about movable assets being seen as collateral. How far ahead are we with that? And I think that is pretty much where the buck stops with small business people who don't have house or land or car for collateral. And could you also answer the question of moratorium if it applies? An extended moratorium for small businesses who can't start paying 1 week after getting the loan.
Who will take it?
I can answer. We do have a 6 months moratorium on both principal and interest. The other aspect of collateral and
you have to go to the institution.
Yeah, the institution.
Yes. But I can say in terms of moratorium, we in fact provide up to 24 months for the SME on principal repayments for moratorium. The collateral, I believe there is a bill that's currently in Parliament to be presented to Parliament that is going to deal with the whole matter of the movable collateral. But as I had said before, one of the things that we have done, we have this credit enhancement facility, the guarantee, which in essence provides the small and medium-sized business with the cushion that they need in terms of when they're applying for a loan. If the collateral is not sufficient, we will guarantee up to $10 million of that loan.
Just for some further information, I'd just like to advise as well that currently the National Investment Fund, from which we are getting this, these funds to help out the SMEs, the fund currently stands at $65 billion. Our investment income over the period is some $5.5 billion, and contributions through the NIS is $10 billion. And our benefit payouts for the period is $12 billion. And you would also note that there was an increase in the payout for beneficiaries under the NIS starting this year.
16 and 2/3%.
We had moved up to some 16 and 2/3% increase in the benefits to pensioners. So we have a net between the contributions and the investments and the payouts of some $3.5 billion. So the fund is quite healthy, and it is growing, and the investment is very prudent that is taking place. In the changing economic landscape, we have to be very cautious going forward in how we make our investments, because we want to ensure the longevity of the fund and its continued growth, so that we'll be able to give periodic adjustments over time as soon as the actuaries advise us of the health of the fund. So I just want everyone to be aware that the fund is progressing quite well, and to encourage all those persons who are not yet contributing to the National Insurance Scheme to do so, because it will mean that in their future years they will have something to look forward to from the fund. Every working Jamaican should contribute to the fund. It is so by law, and we would wish to encourage those persons who are delinquent as well in not handing over the contributions of workers to the fund, to try and do so in a timely manner, so as to avoid other actions that may be contemplated.
Has it ever been discussed increasing the percentage of payment, well, for us at least, employee payment?
Yes, we remember recently we had raised the rate ceiling from 1 million to 1.5 million to allow those at the top an opportunity to earn more at the top to contribute more to the fund. I had said last income would close off the rest of it and leave us with a surplus, because clearly we would prefer if the income was enough to meet the payout demands and still leave a surplus. But the fact of the matter is we need to get everyone who is eligible to do so to contribute, and all the self-employed persons as well. They need to contribute, because in the end of the years they end up at welfare, and we have to find a way as a government to take care of the vulnerable, and this is where we will have that kind of ability to respond. So we are in fact doing the necessary things, but we have to be gradual, right? So we don't send any shocks into the system.
Any other questions, colleagues?
No.
Minister, I can wear my journalist hat. Prime Minister
announced,
yes, earlier, the Jamaica Employee Program as part of the job creation and job initiative. Do you have any word for us on that one?
Well, I must say that to date we have registered some 4,559 persons in the program on our electronic labor exchange. Of this total, we have referred in excess of 400 persons to varying companies within the private sector for consideration. And we know that over 100 have already been interviewed. We are contemplating continuing our meetings island-wide to speak with members of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, with whom the Prime Minister signed the Memorandum of Understanding here at Jamaica House. We wish to continue to sensitize the principals of businesses about the program and to make available the registration list on the electronic exchange so they can do matching. They match the competence, skills competence with the jobs that they have. And we believe, based on discussions with the heads of the JCC and with the stabilizing of the economy, having successfully passed the IMF test, the first hurdle, confidence is being restored in the economy. We are advised that come next year they should be moving more aggressively within the private sector to help with this program in terms of job creation.
Sorry.
Minister, this was a major job release of the government. Just up 100% interview where you have to take from the job. Can you give us an assessment of the success and appeal of this program?
Yeah, well, from our point of view at the ministry, we believe that you have to be careful how you want to measure success, because this is not something that could happen overnight. Because of the economic climate that existed at the time, the most honorable Prime Minister made an appeal to businesses who could, based on their bottom line, employ some skills persons. Because while we were busily creating jobs for persons at a lower skill level, there was no avenue that was there for those skills persons leaving universities and colleges and elsewhere to, there was really no avenue for them to get into the mainstream. And the initiative was developed between the private sector and the government. So really it is the private sector that we expect to be the drivers of this. We as a government have made sure to provide the database so that it is available to them at the press of two buttons. Right? So really they are fully committed to it, I must tell you, but they still have to ensure that once they get the wheels cranking, there is sustainability. You can't engage some persons and within 6 months you have to disengage. So they have to make sure that the projections of their businesses is as such and the climate is as such that they can employ some of these skills persons. They are fully on board and fully committed to the program, and we expect it to grow. It would take some time, as we had indicated at the beginning, but the reason for the continued education and engagement of persons within the business sector is particularly to get them to come on board and to see what they can do. You see, the whole business of productivity in this country is something that the ministry is trying to create a revolution around. If we can get businesses, entrepreneurs in this country to get onto understanding what the gains to their business can be from a productivity conscious and an awareness building and an enhancement of their business, we'll be able to create these jobs that we are talking about in the private sector. And we are working very hard through the JPC, the Jamaica Productivity Center, to build this awareness, and we'll be rolling it out in October in Productivity Week. If we are successful in doing that, we can literally double the amount of jobs that we wanted to create under this program through the private initiative of the business persons.
So, Minister, just to be clear, persons have not yet been employed in the private sector on the G.
Some have been employed that we would not necessarily know. Right? What we have done is a matching, and we have given them the databases has been made available to the JCC so that they can pass it on to their membership. So they don't normally tell us when they employ somebody that we have employed somebody, right? But the fact of the matter, it is there, and they have given their commitment by signing the MOU that they are into this thing and they will support it in the national interest. And you must also remember that recently we have signed a what is the thing we signed that the public social partnership initiative. Again, that is something that helps to underpin the willingness of all the partners to subscribe to issues of this nature.
So at this stage, then, Minister, what's the word to persons who continue to send resumes to Jamaica employees who were told that this would have been a revolutionary program that would gain them employment?
No, it opens, what it does, it opens the gates. It opens the gates and the windows. Yes, this is what it does. And there are signs, there are some companies which I won't name that have come to us, very large companies, and indicated that they have in their business plan the intention to do some things in terms of extending their businesses, and that they will be utilizing the database that we have put out there to access the persons that they need, because they see the quality of the persons right there. And again, as I said earlier about the work permits, no one with the vastness of and the diversity of the skills that are on this database, no one will be able to successfully say that they can't find persons in Jamaica that don't have skills. The case has to be exceptional. They'd have to first convince us at the ministry that they have exhausted the database that we have, because we want to ensure again the protection of the Jamaican worker. That is at the foremost in our agenda. This foremost on our agenda, the protection of the Jamaican worker.
Minister, this is just a final question. Last week there was a press conference in Montego Bay from the Sex Worker Association in the Caribbean. Essentially, they want to be recognized as a they want CARICOM skill certificates. Now, I know it is under your ministry. Are there any plans to regularize sex workers or the sex worker industry in Jamaica? Yes, there was a press conference. They had a press conference.
Oh, you said sex
workers from all over the Caribbean. There was a press conference in Montego Bay, and they said that essentially they want work permits to be able to go to other territories.
The skill sets that are the requirements of the CARICOM skill certificate and the agreements made by the heads in respect of what we are coming on to the categories that are designated, those are not a part of they are not a part of the groups that have been approved. Until such time we have no authority to engage them.
Would you consider regularizing the trade though? Because that's basically what they're asking for, because it's illegal as it is now, and they continue to lament the benefits, etc., etc.
That really does not fall under our purview at the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. It will have to go through other channels before it comes to us. And, we'll be guided by what happens at that time.
We will take that up with another forum.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister.